everyone, and welcome to Friday Coffee. It is May 7th. Woo-wee, flying by. We're excited to be chatting with you today. I am in the middle of nowhere because sometimes you just need to get out of Dodge and hop in your trailer with your children and, hope for the best with your internet
are you skipping
connection.
Zoom school today? Rebel, day one, and she's out.
Sure am. Yeah, just got a note from the secretary. Your children are marked as absent. I was like, yes, they probably are. For that movie they'll be watching on Zoom today. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Anyway. So yeah, you guys, how's everybody doing? Thanks, Shannon.
Good.
Awesome. I'm hoping Shannon unmutes because I don't know if you guys have met each other yet, but Shannon is an incredible marketer and she's launched a really neat new membership. We chatted a bit about it a couple weeks ago on Friday Coffee. It's just so cool what she's doing with companies who are looking to find their brand from a more holistic and kind of like mindful perspective and heart-centered, I think, businesses, especially digital businesses. And Shannon has bore witness to a lot of people, entrepreneurs being, I think, kind of taken advantage of or taken for a ride, or even just being sort of suckers to the plethora of online courses and memberships and programs and the snake oil that sometimes exists in the digital space now that is so, oh, there she is.
I'm in my house coat.
Oh my God, I love it. Oh, you are officially my favorite person of Friday ever.
I'm like,
She's
what?
awesome.
It's raining
She's
and
so
I don't
brilliant.
want to.
We should have like a pajama Friday coffee one week. It's like mandatory pajamas. God. I mean, nobody's leaving their house for at least 3 weeks, right?
Yeah, so true. I have a pajama day every day, so whatever.
I'm dying to hear more, Kelly. I love what you said about heart-centered digital businesses.
I'm in a trailer, so I'm halfway there. Yeah, first of all, let's welcome Emily. And then, hi, Emily. Nice to meet you. Hope to see you, even if you're in your house coat. There's low standards here, so don't be shy. And then, Shan, will you tell us about your business?
Yeah, well, I'm really fired up today.
Yes.
I'm really fired up this last week, actually, because I'm just watching everything that's happening and it breaks my heart. Well, and I don't like having a broken heart. So instead I get pissed off. And the stuff that I'm seeing is like, I'm not sure when online business, and I mean like business coaching and all of that kind of stuff blended with self-help and everybody's a mental health expert all of a sudden, like all of these things, it's blowing my mind. And then I've been watching this girl who's literally burning down the online business industry right now. And by that, I mean like talking celebrity coaches and things like that. And just like the connections and then who their teachers were and like cult mentality. And it's just this whole mess. And I'm just getting wild about it. So I've come up with a new theme, or sort of like, I don't know, maybe we could call it a battle cry almost, for everyone and centering, like basically like what I'm going to center all of my messaging around moving forward. And that is causing good trouble, which consists of, so, there's no doubt that today is the time, like this day and age, this is the time for us to actually make change. Like we can't talk about it anymore. We can't ignore it anymore. This is the time that we all actually do something about the things that are not working for us collectively, are not working for us individually, all that kind of stuff. Like it's time to like let's shake some fucking trees, right? Pardon my language. Let's shake some trees. So we're going to start causing some good trouble. And we're going to include, I've come up with a little framework and it's funny.
A framework for the troublemakers. I'm loving this.
Yeah. A little framework to cause some good trouble, which consists of clarity, which consists of courage, which consists of critical thinking, curiosity, compassion. So maybe we can all start to do some research, and we can all start to think before we talk, and we can all start to, we can't help people while simultaneously hurting them. That's literally the definition of like abuse, right? Like we can't like emotionally harm someone into working with us.
Fair. I think, may I fill in a couple blanks or ask the rest of the group too, Shan? Because I'm with you. I am the first one, especially in a period of reset or revamping and pivoting and all the things COVID brought us as female solopreneurs, digital entrepreneurs. I feel like I am sucker number one or experimenter number one when it comes to somebody's digital program, somebody's 6-week transformation, somebody's new course, somebody's new toolkit. Like I buy it all, and I've stopped myself. And I didn't mind. I really like learning and being a learner again. That was a good phase for me last summer until I said, enough. It's time to activate. It's time to execute. You can stay in learning mode forever. But if I may, because maybe Dale and Zach or Emily, who knows, if you guys have been, let's call ourselves suckers to the digital programs out there, not social schools, of course, but coaching, memberships, mentorships, retreats, all of those things. Not everyone has been let's call it a victim of the ones that aren't so powerful, and a victim of the sales pitch, which we know is very, very effective if done well. Yeah. But Shannon, you work with a lot of women in particular who have been, is what you're saying, right? And it hasn't been beneficial.
So I just saw something literally the other day, and it's from somebody that, like, quite honestly, like I consider a friend. And so I was actually very shocked. But the messaging was, so there was like a fast action 3-week program that was about to go down. And the messaging was literally like, don't ask me questions about when the calls are. Don't ask me how much money it is, because your need for details is keeping you broke.
Oh.
How much is wrong with that?
Lots.
Yeah. And so then I looked up, now this person's in the States, but then I looked up the Canadian advertising standards. So I started reading through that, and I was like, oh, whoa. Apparently this doesn't apply to online business.
Oh, interesting. You're giving me some ideas here. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah. Well, no, cause some good trouble, Kelly.
No, I totally know what you're saying. I can't stand it either. I don't respond well to these emails, but I also have friends who do, and I find it a fascinating science. My friend Roger, radio pal, I knew him when I worked at the newspaper, and him and we have Entrepreneurs Anonymous every Friday afternoons, and we banter about who's subscribed to what new email funnel. And he loves the hard sell, and I can't stand it. But I'm also the person that walks into Gap, and I'm like, could you leave me alone? I just want to browse. Get it off my back. Yeah. So I feel like, it's so interesting. I'm sure there's people that it's psychology, it's science, it's all, sales 101, but I feel like male versus female, what you kind of resonate with and what you don't. I would ask you though, do we not have the option to simply opt out then from those people? And where are you feeling that this is, I'm asking a rhetorical question, but when it becomes offensive or troublesome for you?
So obviously, yes, I fully agree that, we all are responsible for our actions and all of that. And on the same token, when we think about like the bro marketing or this manipulative marketing, is that it's also designed to psychologically shut down your brain's ability to think critically. And it's designed to activate your automatic action sequence. So like, while, you do have the option to not buy it or not subscribe to it, but now you're also battling the physiology of your own brain to do that, because the sales psychology is done in a way to sort of, without your consent, make you do it.
So Shannon, do you think that digital marketers specifically, are turning into kind of the next social media giants that have been really thrown over the coals for their actions for exactly that, right? All of their buttons are placed in ways where they know it's going to light up that addiction center and cause us to click and to scroll. And do you think we're in the same boat, or that we're crossing over into that territory?
I think that what's about to happen is that we're all about to wake up, and this is about to be a very big conversation, because this is trickling down from the Amy Porterfields, the Russell Brunsons, the Rachel Hollises, all of that. Don't even get me started on that. But it's trickling down, and so this is about to be a very big conversation, and this is about to, I think, empower consumers a lot more. And in that, nothing happens overnight, but I think as more people start to learn what's actually happening, they're going to start to see who's doing it, who's not doing it. And people are going to have to either pivot or answer to the people. And it's not about I don't think it's about it's less about where you're putting your buttons on your website and things like that. I wholeheartedly believe in it's our job as marketers to make this an easy situation for people, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do. I as a consumer appreciate when somebody makes something really simple for me.
Mm-hmm.
However, on that note, in the online space, when we start throwing in click funnels and all of that kind of stuff, upsells and the sort of offer pyramids, and you'll get this much here, but if you really want to make a difference, now you need to come into the $10,000 program or whatever. And
Kelly's actually said before with her subscriptions, she's like, sometimes I feel like I'm being penalized for being successful, right? Because you get to those thresholds where it's like, oh, great. So you've got 500 emails now. Guess what? You've built you're following up in this specific product. And now you're going to have to pay this huge premium if you want to continue to grow, or you have to totally migrate everything that you've built. Is that kind of what you're?
Yeah, it's along that. And it's also along the way, the messaging that's being used. It's being used to trigger shame. It's being used to trigger, the I'm not good enough unless I don't do it. It's triggering a lot of scarcity and a lot of FOMO, that kind of stuff. And that's, I think, where it starts to become a lot unethical, because that's when you're actually there's a way to use things, and then there's a way to abuse things.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that there's that fine line that's now starting to be crossed. And then also, especially in the online business coaching industry and things like that, and the insane amount of pressure now just from people's messaging on, well, now you need to scale to 6 figures, and if you're at 6 figures, you hurry up, you got to get to 7, and all of that kind of stuff. And I think where it gets really dangerous is that the people that are teaching it, they're learning these marketing strategies that are designed to work, and so they see a lot of success from it. However, they're not qualified to actually teach it and deliver the results.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's such a fine line that you have to dance as a marketer, right? And it would be interesting to say, okay, at what point am I dipping my toe into that shame marketing? And how, as then an industry, do we come together to be better?
Yeah.
Turn into the good troublemakers.
And that's, it's something that I think 100% needs to be talked about and all of that. But I think there's some pretty key practices that I think we can say goodbye to, especially as we start to, as a society, really pay attention to inclusion and really focusing on us as a whole. Is that when you start to do things like fast action bonuses and all of that kind of stuff, well, you start to punish people that can't pay up front. So now there's a poor tax, or there's a reward for already being successful enough to even be able to afford something up front. There's just so much that we can consider. And this is, I don't know, I am a troublemaker by nature. And I'm kind of listen,
no, I'm not getting that sense at all.
Yeah, no. But like, as far as like status quo goes and stuff, status quo is not working. So do we know what a new one looks like? No, but can we start making changes and test new things out? Yeah. And let's see how that goes, kind of thing, you know? It's just a lot. It's a lot to wrap your brain around, but I think even just making small changes. So my background is in mainly in agency work, but I've also been like the marketing director for not-for-profits and other private companies. And I never saw any of these tactics being used until I moved into the online space. I never saw it. And so I was really confused when I started to come online, and I was like, well, if I like, it never felt right for me. And so for a long time, I thought to myself, like, well, if I have to do that, I'm not doing any of this, because that's 100% not me. Yeah. But then I started to watch and pay attention and do some research and stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay. This is actually a tactic that's passed down from Tony Robbins, who got it from an evangelical preacher, you know, who is a cult leader or whatever, right? I'm like, oh, okay.
I think to kind of like, it doesn't work for everyone, right? And we kind of said that at the beginning. And I mean, even Kelly and I, when we were building Social Market, we talked a lot about, okay, what sort of frequencies do we want to communicate to people, and what sort of messaging do we want to put out there? And what we both kind of landed on was, for those marketers that, you know, we've subscribed to or followed or had interactions with, that suddenly are using those same tactics and are everywhere, what we've noticed is not only do we unfollow them, but what happens first is this weight, right? You open up your email and you're like, oh my gosh, this feels like it's too much. It's right. And it starts to feel like you're getting this burden from, you know, even the people, the influencers that you follow and we're looking to for the guidance and for the inspiration. Suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, it's too much. And I do think that a lot of this shift has happened with obviously COVID, right? And people being online so much. It's the only way that some of these influencers, companies, brands can now connect with their audiences. And so they've had to compete more, right? And so the tactics have maybe gone down a path that they shouldn't have.
Yeah, because it's easier. And why is it easier? Because you don't have to prove, you don't have to actually build trust. You don't have to actually make genuine connections. You don't actually have to be authentic. You don't actually have to have a great product. You can like just literally
you get to hide behind your screen, right?
Yeah. And you can literally just do this, and you actually can mess with somebody's brain in a way that will make them buy from you. So
I think you have to mess with their minds. I think that's just the human mind, right? You know, you go back to Tony Robbins, and you can go back to paper advertising and all that. To be an entrepreneur is to take risk, and to grow some is a bigger risk and a bigger risk, and they ply upon that, right? You know, like if I'm going to make this investment and somebody says, oh, you know, 100% guarantee that you're going to be successful and the next millionaire, you know, like it takes away some of that risk, or at least I think it does. And that's the, because
I bought the 6-pack ab course a month ago and I still don't have a 6-pack.
Yeah, but it's true, because when we're told that, human beings, it's a natural thing that we crave certainty. And it makes us feel comfortable.
Yep.
And then we just deal with the failure later.
Well, nobody wants to fight the failure. It's not like I'm going to go back to Carrie Pierce and say, hey man, I did the abs 10 minutes every day, and they're still not here.
Exactly. And then you start to build on that. So you've already said yes to something, you've already invested into something, and then you're going to you're committed to seeing that through. So if you don't get that result from that thing, you're not going to deem this a wasted investment. You're going to continue to invest until you get the result. And that's kind of like what gets banked on, which is just a nightmare, you know? And I just look at all of the women, like, especially when we think of how COVID has provided so much, COVID and online business in general, especially when we look at like the coaching space, you know, personal development space, all of that kind of stuff, it's provided this amazing opportunity because there's such a low barrier to entry to work online. And the knowledge industry, you can get paid for your knowledge, which is fantastic. But now, and so now with COVID, people have been like, okay, well, now here's my opportunity. I can do this. And now those are the people that are getting really taken advantage of because they didn't know how to start a business. They knew nothing about marketing, right? And they just want to help people. And it's costing them. I've looked at people, I'm like, listen, like you could have gotten a full marketing degree for what you've paid in this BS coaching. A full marketing degree. It's just wild.
There's someone I follow online called Charlie the Disruptor, and he teaches about using Facebook and creating ads there. But he also bills himself as a guru buster. So anyone out there claiming that, oh, you just run this type of campaign with this style ad and you'll cut your cost per lead in half and triple your sales. He loves just busting the gurus who talk like that because he does spend a lot of money on Facebook ads and he knows that those tactics won't work. So I appreciate that from him. I don't always agree with his tactics, but he's fun to follow. Charlie the Disruptor.
I'm gonna look that up. I love a good disruptor.
Yeah. and a guru buster is also what he calls himself.
You know what? I think I might have actually seen who that was. I've come across someone, I forget who the name is, but there's a lot of YouTube videos that he does where he goes in and he goes into these live events and literally times exactly what they're going to do and say and when they do it and how they set the stage and all of that kind of stuff. And it's pretty fascinating. It's really funny to me.
Yeah, maybe he did that pre-COVID, go into events, but I just recently, yeah. It sounds like him. He's Teknor or Technor is his last name, and he's in California. He's got long hair and a long beard.
Brilliant. Love it.
Just on a bit.
It's just a lot.
On a bit of a humorous note, when you say a framework for troublemakers, there was a sign, we were in Hawaii and there was a gate there, and anyways, the sign said with a little arrow, and it said, "Non-conformists line up here." And it just, for whatever reason, that sticks in my head, and it's kind of like, you're not going to make a framework for troublemakers, you know, good or bad. And I did like the good troublemakers, like that. That's a cool thing, but yeah.
And it's less of a framework, and it's more of like, these are some key areas to just pay attention to. You know, because we do, like, as human beings in general, we love certainty and we crave structure, even the wild ones. We crave a little bit of structure, but there's a difference between a framework and a formula. Framework, you have all the freedom in the world to do what you want with it. And when people are giving you those formulas or whatever, it's like, do this, this, and this. And if you don't, then you're horrible.
I do find it fascinating that we all want change for everybody else, but just not for me. You know, like it's you know, we'll change everybody else's world so it works better for me, kind of thing. But I'm not changing. So in some committee work and stuff like that, you know, and there are volunteers and stuff, but yeah, they want the organization to change, but never the committee and the way it's working.
Yeah.
Internally, it just humans and as I'm getting longer in the tooth and around more and more, you know, and I see my grandkids now and people say, oh, they're so different. They're exactly the same. Like they just, because they're human beings and they have the same kind of basic needs and wants. They just have different toys around them, right? You know, and in different ways of filling those wants and needs. So
yeah. And that's why, like, for me, I don't work within organizations anymore. Like I genuinely believe that us owning our businesses are actually our greatest tool to create change. But this is why I'm really passionate about making some trouble, the self-help industry, all of that kind of stuff, because that's we're helping people on a, like, we have to change on individual levels if anything's going to change. Like, we can't just like look at the government and be like, hey, fix this. It's like, no, like, what do we need to do to fix it?
Yeah. Your passion doesn't show at all.
No, I know. I got to work on that.
I think honestly, because there have been so many rules and regulations the past year, we've kind of fallen into this cycle of compliance, right? And we just kind of we're coasting. I think most of us are coasting, just following along with the status quo rather than questioning or having the energy to want to change, right? Because it's hard. I think we're all exhausted and burnt out and tired of everything, right? And so it's hard to channel our inner Shannon passion.
Yes.
Well, you can borrow it from me. I've got extra. But it's interesting too, because I also see people who are tired of the situation that's going on right now. Everyone is exhausted. And so there's been a lot of talks about mental health and all of that kind of stuff, which is great. And then, but people are forgetting to go deeper. I'm double Aquarius. Like I ask why probably like 25 times until I sort of feel like we're scratching the surface. Right. So it's like, okay, like now we've got all these people, we're talking about mental health and we're noticing how the world's not set up to help properly and all of that. And I'm like, okay, great. Yes, here we go. And like, who can access mental health right now? Who can, like, why did we not care about mental health before? And because before it only affected certain groups mostly. Now it's affecting everyone. So now we care. Okay, like now let's go 25 layers deep and we can really start to scratch the surface. But then that starts to feel too much. And I get that. And then we get tired. And we're already tired.
It's funny. I sat in on a Zoom meeting, I think it was last week, for a woman who was announcing her candidacy for mayor. And it was a bit of a question period. And I actually asked her, I said, what is your plan for helping our youth get back on track after this? Because this has been a really confusing year for them. You think about it, they're going to school with their masks on. They're not allowed to play with their friends at recess. Yep. They have to eat their lunch separated from other kids. And what we're starting to see is anxiety and depression in very young kids, right? And we all know that in teenagers, we've seen suicide rates skyrocket. And I mean, as a mom of 3, it's concerning, right? I see it in my own children, and they're lucky that they've got 3, right? They've at least had each other to play with. And, I mean, she looked at me and she was like, that's an interesting point, but certainly nothing I've considered yet. I was like, well, I'm out. Like, how could you not consider something so big and heavy? And I appreciate that everything feels like a priority right now, but I feel like our kids have been the real big losers in this in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I have 3 young nephews also, and it's been challenging for them too. And I don't know. It's like, what is the right answer? What is the solution? What is the anything? And I think now is the time to think about what we're going to do on the other side of this. Because this is going to end.
I'm tired of the talking. I'm with you. Like I said, Kelly, I'm tired of platforms and people's ideas. I want to see your actionable plan. Show me your plan. Show me your budget, right? But it's great to stand up there and make all of these promises, which is what happens, election after election, and nothing changes and people forget what was even promised.
Yeah. Well, people bank on that also. But I think like now is the time to start. Okay, like the nice thing is that we're all going to see the end of this. We're going to see what happens on the other side of this. So when we look at all of the anger and all of the rage and, you know, all the people thinking this stuff and all the people thinking that stuff and everyone fighting with each other. We're going to see the end of this. We're going to see like how this actually shakes out. So I think it'll be really interesting. Just from like an observer's point of view. Like I have nephews, but I'm by myself. I've got my dog and we can just like chill and we can just be away from, you know, the world, and we can close the blinds if we want to.
Have you guys seen the, I think it's Excel gum commercial of everybody coming back together?
No.
Oh, you guys, it's so good. It's like there are old people like rolling around and making out like on hills, and it's just like this big like coming together love fest, and it is hilarious. And I mean, honestly, that's great marketing because what they've done is given people something to look forward to. They've made them laugh, and they've tied it to their product. I mean, it's actually brilliant marketing. I should find that and share it with you guys.
Joy, so hope, and sales.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's good. It's really good. And honestly, when Kelly said, she's like, "Have you seen that commercial?" And I was like, the gum one. She's like, "Yes." Like we both knew instantly that was what she was talking about, because we were looking for something to grab onto that felt hopeful when we heard that we were going to have our kids at home with us for another big
just in time for Mother's Day.
I know. Honestly, I'm lucky my kids are very self-sufficient technophobes, but it's still challenging.
Yeah. I know. Great marketing right now is light. It's funny.
It's hopeful. And you know, I think that you were right too. Like I scribbled it down, but when we started the conversation, just talking about that heart-centered, authentic marketing, right? Especially digitally, and that's hard to do, right? And I think people take the easy path, right? Of all of the shame marketing we were talking about. That's easy, right? There's nothing inventive there. There is. There's a plan for that, right? Everybody knows exactly how that works. But to sit back and say, okay, how do I show up in a real way and give people something that they need while still, you know, fueling my business? That's hard.
Yeah, because that requires deep understanding of not only your brand, your message, but your clients, like all of it. Like it's really deep stuff to be able to get something like that out and have it be super effective.
Totally.
But I mean, the nice thing right now is that would stand out like that stands out so much right now. I always notice the super like the stuff that makes me feel good. I'm like, ooh, wait a minute. I'm not used to feeling this anymore.
Right? Yes.
Yeah, it's like kind of marketing to connect the dots for people. Where you're going to be in the future and how your brand fits in.
So I'm curious, has anybody else seen examples of that recently that we can kind of learn to and aspire to? Just Excel.
Just Excel. That's the one that comes to mind, the gum. Yeah.
I know, but I wonder if, because they did such a great job of execution on this one and it's had such a fast uptick, I wonder if we will see hopefully other examples of that, right? Maybe other companies will say, hey man, maybe we're doing it wrong here, right? Like if I have to see another commercial or piece of marketing that reinforces isolation and masking, and I'm so over it. Don't show me the now, show me tomorrow, show me the possibilities, show me where we're headed.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, marketing experts. Now, if you were AstraZeneca and you had to sell your COVID vaccine, what would the commercial look like?
Oh, that commercial would be a party. That commercial would be the biggest party.
Seriously.
Where just everyone is just having the greatest time. That commercial would be grandkids hugging grandparents.
Oh, yes, totally.
Oh, yeah.
All the seniors pouring out of the senior center and being embraced by their families. Oh,
that commercial would be just celebration. But like a lot of I wouldn't overuse like physical touch, but I would like, you know, the handshake, just a handshake. Two businessmen doing a deal and having a handshake.
I've actually thought a lot about the coming back together. I think that we're all desperately craving touch, right? Like
Yeah.
I miss hugging people. And even like when I was dropping my kid off at preschool this morning, because he's still allowed to go, one of the other kids and I, we always do a little dance party in the morning before he goes off. And I went to fist bump him, and he was like, I'm not allowed to touch you. And I was like, oh God, I was just gutted. I was like, I just desperately want to not only fist bump you, like I totally just want to snuggle you, but where's the line, right? Because I think that there's going to be this desperate craving for touch and affection. And we also live in this time where touch and affection has become not okay. So I wonder how we're going to reconcile all of that too. Like even in the marketing with the Excel commercial, believe me, there were no boundaries, but I was totally into it.
Yep. It'll be really fun to watch the online dating sites market after this.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Bumble better come up with something really creative. I'm not on any of them, but I like to just like watch, but oh yeah. Online dating sites, they have just such a huge potential ahead of them. I mean, everyone does, but
even right now there's potential, right? There's opportunity everywhere through this, especially with marketing.
Yeah.
To really bind people to your brand, right? Yep. And to be memorable well beyond this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was one company that said something memorable back at the beginning. I should look up what they're doing now. I think it was Patagonia or Arc'teryx, like a company like that. And they said first to close, last to open. Like it was a really responsible message.
Yep.
And I think it was Patagonia. I wonder what they're doing.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I think people are really going to remember the companies that were like overtly responsible and like overtly in support of doing the right thing right now, when all of this is over in 2, 3, 4 years, when like the dust has really settled on it and people don't think about it all the time. I think people will still remember those companies that made a difference when we were all struggling, and those companies that made it like a legitimate, sincere effort to actually try and make a difference or do the right thing. I think people are really going to respond well. And I think that companies that were doing that are going to see the financial like upswing in like later times when they may not expect it, because people are still remembering the good things that they did when maybe other people
like playing the long game.
Does one come to mind for you?
Sorry, what was that, Jake?
Does one come to mind for you, Zach?
Not really, honestly. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't watch a lot of TV. I watch, like, I just have like Netflix and all of the subscriptions. I'm a classic.
Zach plays rugby.
I'm a classic early 20s. I really only watch the Raptors games. So I get Wealth Simple, Quest Trade, and Tangerine commercials. That's all I see, because that's who sponsors the Raptors. So that's really all I see. I'm trying to think of people.
You know what though? The Raptors are amazing on social media. And
they are.
I can't remember the player, but he has a deal with Red Bull, and the reels that they've created together are unbelievable. Like everyone feels like this highly produced commercial, but they're just reels, and they're like playbacks. God, which player is it? I can't remember his name, honestly, but they're brilliant.
One organization that I do think is doing a really good job right now is the NBA, actually, especially in comparison to the other leagues. Whether you're looking at social issues or COVID or whatever it is, I feel like the NBA is really doing good things, like doing commercials with the WNBA. They did one where Steph Curry was like at a car, like going to buy a car or something like that. And I can't remember her name, but she's like one of the bigger stars in the WNBA. And they listed off all of her accolades, like 9-time MVP, 4-time champion, blah, 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 blah. And then they like look at Steph and they're like, Steph Curry, and they're like, sorry, who are you? And he's like, I'm trying to do all those things. And so, they're showing the WNBA star as the hero to the normal people in the commercial. Yeah. And then Steph Curry, who's like one of the biggest names in basketball, is like, I'm trying, And so I think the NBA is doing a good job, where like the NHL and the NFL, you don't see doing that.
I think that I'm gonna counter you on that though, and I talked about this on one of our live Zooms a few weeks ago. I actually think that the Oilers have done an outstanding job through all of this. They have really utilized social media, especially Twitter, to run all of their 50-50 tickets, which they have done so much good with. So they took a concept that was previously only done in person, selling 50-50 tickets. They did it online. I mean, I think the first one that they did online was over $1 million. The system shut down. Like they had to rebuild the system. But they have done a phenomenal job of trying to connect with people and give back through all of this. And I wish other hockey teams would look to them and try and emulate what they're putting out there, because I do. I think their CSR plan has been phenomenal.
Yeah, and they also were really, really amazing with the death of Colby Cave.
Oh my gosh, the online memorial! Like they did
and the memorial fund.
The memorial over Twitter, and they had the players speak on his behalf. I mean, I watched the whole thing. I cried. I felt connected to it, and they did the 50-50 that night. Went to his foundation, which again, I just
they helped out. They co-created the foundation. So I think his wife is going to, I think she's going to chair it or run it in some capacity, but it's in tandem with the Oilers. And I just think that that's so amazing.
But the issue with that is the league made them play that night.
What's that? Sorry?
The issue with that though is the league made them play that night. Where
you think that they should have rescheduled, hey?
100%. The Oilers got beat by the Flames. I'm a Flames fan, and the Flames suck this year. There is no reason that they should ever beat the Oilers, and they pounded the Oilers. And you could tell that they were run down, they were tired, they were not in it mentally.
Yeah, I think they lost like 5-0 that night.
Yeah, I think it was McDavid after the game saying like, it's essentially pretty shitty that we had to play tonight.
Yeah.
And where like the NBA, the game would have been canceled.
You're probably right.
The games would have been postponed, but the NHL, I feel like, is a bit more and they don't look at the things like that. Where I feel like the people
teams have had an enormous opportunity. I mean, an enormous challenge, but an enormous opportunity through all of this to captivate fans in a different way, and to then, with that captive audience, do good. Right? So many opportunities there. So yeah, Zach, you're right. I think that all of those big organizations should be saying, okay, how do we reinvent A, to remain relevant, but B, to be doing more good with these captive audiences.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like it really comes down to the old saying, like, even if people aren't going to remember what you say, people aren't going to remember your marketing. They're not going to remember your message. They're not going to remember what you say, but they are going to remember how you made them feel.
Yeah. And what you did, so what you actually did that was actionable. And
they might not even remember what you did, but they're going to remember that, like, they're going to have a positive or a negative emotional attachment to you as an organization. And we're really going to see that play out after this is all done. Like, once we start forgetting the pandemic, we're really going to start to see like who built genuine bonds and who broke them.
So really, I think what we want that is we want to be the troublemaking do-gooders.
Yeah, good troublemakers.
With a structure.
Yes.
With just, just guidelines, maybe. Just something to play with. Because when you get too many ideas, then you don't even move forward. But when you have something to work within, then you can get started. And I think being able to avoid, like, having some some critical components, especially because when you're causing trouble, I mean, it's been said, I'm a little passionate about this. So if I don't take the steps to actually like, work through what it is, then I can end up running my mouth and, hello cancel culture, right? But like, not necessarily considering all that needs to be considered before speaking and stuff. And so your intention and impact are two very different things. So while my intention might be okay, if I don't get clear, if I don't think critically, if I don't stay curious about something, then my impact is not going to be what I want it to be.
I love that.
Yeah.
So can I ask, Zach, you think there'll be a memory like later of companies who did good? And I'm just wondering, how long is that consumer memory? Like if our attention spans are shorter, so part of me thinks, yeah, people are just going to be, okay, next, who's serving my needs at this moment, as opposed to, going, hey, this company or organization did good and I feel good with them, kind of thing. Is
Yeah,
I think we have to remember that doing good isn't a
definitely
one-off.
going to depend on the person.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to depend on the person. But I think what might end up happening is it'll be a less of a conscious decision that people are actually supporting these companies. So like something that's close to me is like, I'm really big in the Calgary craft beer scene. And there's a brewery that I've always been a pretty big fan of, that has been the first brewery to shut down and like clean for a week, whatever, rather if they've had a positive case come close to their facility, or if case numbers are getting bad in Calgary or whatever, they're the first people to shut down, start offering delivery more days a week, and really promoting people staying home. I think so. Like I have just started supporting them more than I used to, because I like that they're being responsible. And I think it'll just start to become an unconscious decision because I've just gotten used to going to them. So I will just in 3-4 years, when I'm like, I want a beer, I'm going to go here because this is where I just go now. And I think that's going to be more of the case for especially more local businesses, whether it's a restaurant or a retail space or whatever that looks like. I think people are just going to be, they're just going to build a habit of going to those places now. And then later on, it'll just become sort of something that is just second nature to them now.
So they're using it to build brand loyalty.
I think a little bit. Yeah, I think yeah, you could say that.
Which brewery is it? Sorry.
The Establishment.
Oh, okay.
So they're on the Barley Belt, and they've been like the first ones to close and say, hey, we had someone come in here who was a close contact, so we're spending the next 4 days cleaning, and all of our staff members are getting tested. Where Alberta Health Services doesn't tell them they have to do that, but they're taking that extra step to do that because that's what they just personally feel is the right thing to do. And regardless on if you agree with it or not, I think at the end of the day, they're making a business decision with the best interest of their staff and their customers. Mm-hmm. And so as much as you might want to go sit on their patio and drink beer, they're offering you another way to get their product in the safest, cleanest way that they feel possible. And that may be them taking a bit of a financial burden on, but they're doing it right.
Yeah. It's important to remember too, that like, while new bonds are being created based on what's happening right now, and people are starting to gravitate towards maybe brands that they weren't typically going towards, or bonds are being strengthened right now based on people's actions. Once this is all done, like that's still a relationship. A bond is still, it's a connection, it's a relationship, and it still requires nurturing. So it's not like, oh, I did this one thing and all of these people came. If you want to keep that, like that has to start to now become ingrained in your brand and in every single thing that you do and put forward moving forward to be able to like maintain it.
I was thinking the same thing. It has to become a part of your company ethos, right?
That
we are going to lead with heart or with people, right? And that always has to be that. every decision you make in that business, you have to go back to it and say, are we still remaining true to this heart and putting people first, right? You can't make one big splash and hope that you can ride that wave for forever. It's a constant investment.
Yeah. And it's being able to say, you know, okay, in this situation, we got used to, you know, putting people before profit. I mean, I think that should be every company. That should be status quo for every company. Unfortunately, it's not, but people before profit, and being able to sort of say like, okay, I've gotten comfortable with doing things that I didn't necessarily have to do, but I feel they're important to me. I feel they're important to my company. I feel they're important to my brand. And now I'm used to kind of doing that and sharing that with my audience and explaining that with my audience. And so now moving forward, it's staying true to, okay, I can do hard things. I can bring people with me on that journey. I can explain to them, I can stay true to my values and not worry, because this is what I deem, like, this is what feels right for us as a business, and to continue doing that on various topics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with all of that.
Just to go back to beer for a minute, because
it is Friday. I will eventually have a Friday beer instead of a Friday coffee, I promise.
But you know, sometimes it's hard to define what is craft beer, right? Because you know, you can take is a Grey Goose out on the island who gets bought up by a big company. It's the same beer, so is it still craft, even though it's owned by this huge conglomerate? But the feeling, the ability to shut down and lose money, like cost sales, to clean or to make sure your staff is okay in that. Like that's the solopreneur or the entrepreneur, or putting his own self and feelings into the company, and that echoes through. Whereas, you know, if you have a multinational company now, you know, really calling the shots, saying that, yes, you're a craft brew, but you got to make this much money to keep our shareholders happy.
And we saw that with Alexander Keith's way back in the day. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I mean, they started out really small, and I believe they got bought out by, I want to say Labatt, but I can't remember. And their beer changed overnight, right? As did their marketing. And I think to remain craft, you should have to use all local ingredients, you know, within a certain radius. And you should give back to the community that you operate in. And fine, you're going to get bought out by a bigger company to have that craft title remaining. You have to still be rooted in the local.
And it's about innovating too, like not only having 3 beer offerings and sticking to that because you know they sell, and you know, trying new beers and trying beers that are on trend or trying beers that are off trend. And then I think the problem is people think that if you're not independent, you're not craft. And so Banded Peak Brewing is,
oh, they make great beer.
But they're owned by Budweiser now.
Yep.
But they're still craft. They're just not independent.
Why do you think what do you think still makes them craft?
Their innovation, their sort of tie to Calgary. Because to me, craft is just, you know, it's local, it's created, it's trying things, it's stuff like that. That's to me what craft beer is. Like people don't think Big Rock is craft, but it is. It's just the big one in Alberta. They're independent. They hire local people. They use mostly local ingredients, I'm sure, and they innovate. So I don't know what about that isn't craft, just because
I think you're right. It's a strong argument, Zach.
Can we add another opinion? I actually
hi Emily and company.
I actually have a Labatt employee with me right here.
No way.
Yeah, so
very cool.
That is part of the Anheuser-Busch family, which is Budweiser, Bud Light, Banded Peak, obviously, which got bought out, Neutral, Tempo. And like, I always have a hard part because people like, you know, they're like, we only support local, this and that. As Labatt, we hire 550 employees in Alberta alone. And like, we impact so many organizations that we support. Like Corona does the clean the beaches. So we cleaned up Edmonton and downtown, like Calgary areas and stuff like that. We cleaned the beaches out in Vancouver, went up to Lake Louise, cleaned up the mountains. So
Well,
I
that's
guess
awesome.
I guess I think also when you guys were talking local and keeping it local, I think for craft companies, the idea of getting like having being backed by a bigger company is that they started small, but then they can get across Canada. They get that infusion of money that allows them to grow, because I think essentially, and I think probably what you've said before, is that they want to grow bigger, but they just don't have the capital to get out bigger. So then I think and I mean, I don't know all the workings of inside, big companies, but the kind of the benefit to it is that they can get bigger than just say, like, I mean, I'm from a small town, so even just say, I know there's a big, was it in Blind Man in Lacombe, that if they want to get bigger, it's hard to get outside of their little zone. So with that infusion of funds, they can do that. But then I think it is also very important that they do stay to their base and don't change from because I mean, they think everyone's buying it because they were local. All their audience to them was local, and that's kind of what is pulling people there. So I think it's also then when they go to these other places and they go across Canada, how can they then be local to those places and do good in those places as well? But I mean, we all know at the end of the day that it takes money to do that. So I think that's where these big companies come in and they buy them so that they can do that kind of stuff. I think Bandit Peak, and then what's the one in Vancouver?
Stanley Park.
Stanley Park.
Like that.
Yeah, they make good beer too.
Those breweries still have creative freedom over the recipes, right?
Like we don't touch anything. We're just there as a distribution center. So now they're in BDL. They get to go across Alberta, have a full sales team of more than 50 people and stuff like that.
Because you sell all of it.
Yeah. Well, I don't. I'm on the RTD, but our Labatt employees now sell Bounded Peak and help get them in stores that they weren't going to before.
Well, they're going to be at the Saddle Dome, right? Which is huge.
Yeah.
And
That's very cool.
They're at Lake Louise now. Instead of the Kokanee cabin, it's the Banded Peak base camp. Yeah, base camp. So they get them in those places that they wouldn't normally be to build
that Stampede thing is huge, because I know it's been a tough nut to crack for lots of beer companies, right? And so I guess having the connection to Labatt allows, a local company like that the opportunity, because it was a couple, obviously not last year because there was no Stampede, but a couple of years ago, there were a number of local breweries that were saying, hey, like, we'd love to have an opportunity to have our beer featured in some of these places. So it's interesting that is a different route for them to expand their brand and their product, is by, partnering with a company like Labatt.
And does the making of it stay the same, or
yeah,
do they?
It's all brewed in there.
Oh,
We built them a bigger they got a bigger brewery. Like, they built their new downtown, or not downtown, but in their new patio and stuff. Like, I'm in Edmonton now, so I don't get to see it, but yeah, they have, I think their expansion was like 300% the original capacity, that they still continue to brew everything there.
Yeah.
Well, maybe our inaugural Friday beer will be sponsored by Labatt one day.
We do have a lot here. But now he's on the
we debated in the beginning. We're like, should we do a Friday happy hour where people really need to like come together and have a drink? And we decided that coffee was the best way to start out, but that we would inevitably throw in an occasional happy hour. So I promise, Emily, we'll come knocking on your door. You'll be first.
Yes, we have a lot here. Now he's on the cooler side, so there's better drinks on that side.
Amazing. Well, we'll have some way to get beer to everyone, and we will do this over beer. I promise. Yeah. And I'm going to make it a priority for us.
Yeah.
That was an interesting discussion on growth and sales like that. That would be fun to continue at some other time. Because if you are the small brewer, it's hard to sell into Saskatchewan, and you're not going to sell into Ontario, and you're not going to sell into BC either. So you're here, and but if you can tag up with Labatt's or whatever and get that distribution, that makes it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I love about this group is, I mean, we've got new grads and seasoned marketers and business owners and all of these industries that come together, and we just chill out and talk about whatever it is that is happening in the world that week or what needs to be unpacked. And so it's really cool to bring together such a unique group. And Shannon, your energy, I think, really fueled it this morning, which was wonderful. I hope you join us again. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. We're at 11:05 here. So I think that we'll probably finish off if anyone has final thoughts that they want to send us off for the weekend with.
Just enjoy
Yeah.
by yourself.
Cheers.
Don't go to any rodeos.
That was such an Alberta branded protest. Like that was so on brand for us.
You're so right. I actually knew people that were like, I almost went. I just wanted to get out there, but I was worried that I might make the front page of the paper.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh my gosh, that was such an Alberta, like when anyone can ever do something and the reaction is, oh, that is so Alberta. Like, you know, it was on brand.
Yeah, I'm sure that one made international news.
Oh.
Meanwhile, in Alberta.
Yeah, just sometimes you just got to put your head down.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.